we're going to go over 3 examples of multiplying two mixed numbers. For this first example, I'm going to explain in detail the method that we're using and why it works, and then we'll go through the next 2 a little bit more quickly, and I encourage you to try those next 2 multiplication problems on your own before watching the solution. Let's get into it. Remember, a mixed number is a way of representing a number consisting of some wholes and a fractional part. This 4 2/3 refers to 4 wholes and a fractional part of another 2/3. Mixed numbers can be useful in some situations, but they're really a pain for arithmetic. They're not easy to work with when doing stuff like addition and multiplication. On the other hand, your standard fraction, whether it's proper or improper, but just normal fractions, are very straightforward to multiply. For example, 7/3 times 1/2. To multiply these fractions, we just multiply across the numerators, 7 times 1, which is 7, and then we just multiply across the denominators, 3 times 2, which is 6, and so 7/6 would be the answer. So to multiply mixed numbers, we just want to convert both of our mixed numbers into standard fractions like this, and then it will make the multiplication a breeze. To convert these mixed numbers into normal fractions, we've got to remember what a mixed number represents. Remember, 4 2/3, this is addition in disguise. That's basically what a mixed number is. This refers to 4 plus 2/3. And there's a good chance you're familiar with how we would combine these things into a single fraction. We've just got to give 4 the same denominator as 2/3. Once we get common denominators, we can combine them into a single fraction, just like we want. So how do we rewrite 4 as a fraction with a denominator of 3? Well, if we have 4 wholes and we're cutting them into thirds, how many thirds would that be? Well, each of the 4 wholes consists of 3/3, so it would be 4 times 3/3. In other words, to convert 4 into a fraction with the denominator of 3, we just have to multiply it by 3/3, which is just a funny way of multiplying by 1. When we multiply 4 by 3/3, that tells us that we can rewrite it without changing its value as 3 times 4, which is 12/3. So again, 3/3 is just a form of 1, so multiplying by that doesn't change anything. 3/3 times 4 is 12/3, then we just have to add our 2/3 and we can combine these fractions. 12/3 plus 2/3 is 14/3. And so perhaps we can shrink this and set it off to the side. We've converted our first mixed number, 4 2/3. This is equal to 14/3, and we're multiplying that by 2 3/5. So let's convert that now. Remember, this is just addition in disguise. It refers to 2 plus 3/5. Then we need to rewrite 2 with the denominator of 5 so that we can combine these terms into a single fraction. To represent 2 as a fraction with the denominator of 5, we just have to multiply it by 5/5, which is just a weird form of 1. So 2 wholes is equal to 2 times 5/5. That's 2 times 5, or 10/5. And then, of course, we just have to add our 3/5, and this is equal to 13/5. And there we go. So this multiplication of mixed numbers that we're doing is equal to 14/3 times 13/5. Now we just have to multiply across the numerators and the denominators. 14 times 13 you might do on a calculator or by hand, or you might be able to do it in your head. It's equal to 182. And then in the denominator, a little easier, we've got 3 times 5, which is 15. And this fraction is fully reduced. 182 and 15 have no factor in common greater than 1, so we can't reduce the fraction, and that's our final answer. And that's the straightforward method that we can use to multiply two mixed numbers. So here's our next example. This one's a little tricky because we've got a negative, and chances are most of your mixed number problems probably won't involve negative numbers. But I've included this example here just so we know how it works. Since Since we have a positive number being multiplied by a negative one, our product is going to be negative. So what you could do is just ignore the negative sign and multiply these numbers as if they were positive, and then just remember to make your answer negative. That's one way you could do it, but we'll keep the negative here throughout our solution. First things first, let's write 6½ as an improper fraction. Remember, this refers to 6 plus 1/2. To write 6 as a fraction with a denominator of 2, we just multiply it by 2 over 2. So this is equal to 2 times 6, which is 12, divided by 2. And then we have our plus 1/2, and that's equal to 13/2. So nice and easy, that's our first mixed number in improper fraction form, 13/2. And this is being multiplied by negative 3⁵. Here's where you could make a really simple mistake with this mixed number. You might carelessly think that negative 3⁵ refers to negative 3 plus 1/5. And I would not blame you at all if you made this mistake. Mixed numbers are kind of messy. It's not really common that they're used like this, so this is a perfectly understandable mistake. What you have to remember is that the negative is being applied to this entire mixed number. So if you're familiar with the distributive property, 3⁵ we know is 3 plus 1/5. Since we have a minus sign in front of it, we're making this whole thing negative. So it's negative 3 plus 1/5. So what we're really looking at here is making both of these terms negative. It's actually negative 3 minus 1/5. So just remember, if you have a negative mixed number, the negative applies to the whole part and the fractional part. And with that in mind, we can pretty much carry on as usual. How do we write negative 3 as a fraction with a denominator of 5? Well, we just have to multiply it by 5 over 5. So this is equal to 5 times negative 3, which is negative 15 over 5. And then from that, we're subtracting 1/5. So now remember, we are subtracting across the numerators, whereas previously we were adding across the numerators. Negative 15 minus 1 is negative 16, so this is negative 16/5. And that's it. We can set this work aside. So this multiplication of mixed numbers is equal to 13/2 times negative 16/5. All we've got to do is multiply across the numerators. 13 times negative 16 is negative 208. And then multiplying across the denominators, 2 times 5, that is 10. Now you may notice both the numerator and denominator are even, so we can reduce this fraction by a factor of 2. To do that, we just cut the numerator in half. Half of negative 208 is negative 104, and then we just also have to cut the denominator in half. Half of 10, of course, is 5. And then this fraction is fully simplified, so that's our final answer, negative 104 over 5. All right, on to our final example. One quick note I'll make, in the previous problem, we had one negative mixed number. If both of your mixed numbers were negative and you were multiplying them together, then you could just totally ignore those negatives, because remember, a negative times a negative is a positive, so those negatives would just cancel out. So here's our last example. Let's convert this mixed number to an improper fraction. 4 1/4, that refers to 4 plus 1/4. To convert 4 into a fraction with a denominator of 4, we just have to multiply it by 4 over 4. Again, I'll reiterate, that's just a form of 1, and when we multiply by 1, we don't change the value that we're working with. So this is equal to 4 times 4, which is 16 over 4. And then we add the extra 1/4 that we have, and this is equal to, adding across the numerators, 17/4. Shrinking this and setting it off to the side, we've got that our mixed numbers, or this multiplication rather, is equal to 17/4. 17/4 multiplied by, now let's go ahead and convert this. 7 1/3, that refers to 7 plus 1/3. To write 7 as a fraction with a denominator of 3, we just multiply it by 3 over 3. 3/3 times 7 is 3 times 7, which is 21/3. thirds. And then we have an extra third to add, so this is equal to 21 plus 1, 22 thirds. And then again, we'll shrink this down and set it off to the side. So what we've got going on is 17 fourths multiplied by 22 thirds. Multiplying across the numerators gives us 374. That's 17 times 22. And then multiplying across the denominators, 4 times 3, that is 12. Again, we may notice the numerator and denominator are both even, so we can reduce the fraction by cutting the numerator and denominator in half. That's taking out a common factor of 2. Half of 374 is 187. And then half of 12, of course, is 6. That is fully reduced, and so that is our final answer. And that's how we multiply two mixed numbers.
Do I want to? You tune into everything. Keep to